Hello, my name is Sven Ringling from iProcon in London. Today I want to show you how easy it is to build your own transaction in the SuccessFactors Extension Center, what you might have known formerly as the Metadata Framework or MDF. Quite often we have realized that consultants or specialists with customers who are used to SAP on-premise systems are quite surprised how much you can actually achieve in SuccessFactors without programming a single line of code. Quite a few things we are used to require ABAP coding or any other programming technology in your on-premise system can actually be achieved with configuration in the Admin Center and Extension Center in SuccessFactors. So today I want to show you a little example. What I want to build is a transaction to record gifts given or received. This is a transaction which customers in the pharmaceutical or healthcare industry might be particularly interested in, because they often have the requirement that gifts received or given by employees must be recorded and tracked for compliance reasons. So, I want to build a screen that allows you to record gifts or invitations you receive by customers or give to customers or other business partners. What we need for this is first a couple of pick lists, which you may know under the name of F4 helps if you come from the on-premise world, with the values we will require later in our screen. Then we create the actual data objects with the fields that need to be recorded. We also might need a couple of rules for populating fields. We want a workflow for approval or information. We obviously need a user interface to populate the fields. We have to set a few properties that define how the data object behaves. And eventually we want to assign it to the employee profile so that it can be used by every employee in their self-service application. So let's go into the system and proceed. I'm logged in to my SuccessFactors instance as an admin here with all the rights I need to create new data objects. I'm in the Admin Center and I now want to go into the Extension Center to start. The Extension Center is quite new. As I mentioned earlier, you might know it as a MDF framework where you can achieve similar outcomes, but the Extension Center is a bit more user-friendly. I want to create a brand new extension and give it the title of anti-bribery compliance. And also pick an icon to make it a bit nice looking afterwards, as it's about something that might get you into court. Let's pick this. So a text, that's the header of our extension, which I'm saving now. So the interesting parts are down here where I can create the actual objects or pick lists. I've done some pre-work so you don't have to watch me creating loads of pick lists. And pick lists that are already in the system can be included into our extension here. One of them is the type of benefit, which I assign now. And the other is the list of business partners, which are the companies we want to deal with. So let's pick that as well. So we have type of benefit, which would be invitation or gift, and then we have the business partners, which contains a list of companies. But now I want to show you how to create a dependent pick list so that for each business partner we can actually also record employees assigned to that company. So I would call this business partner employee list. And here I can pick a parent pick list, so I can now actually assign it to the list I created earlier, which is the list business partner compliance. Start date. For start date I always go for a very early date, so I make sure that I never get into trouble. Basically go to 1900. So that's basically the header for my pick list, and now I can actually add a few values. Remember, this would be individuals who are assigned to these companies. So this might be some medical doctors. Dr. Yuan Lee, parent pick list, Guy's Hospital in London, code another value, Dr. Helen Turner. She's also working at Guy's Hospital in London. Then we add Peter Schwarz, assuming he's working at the Charité Hospital in Berlin. And finally, one employee for ABC Health. Let this be Sirisha Patel, ABC Health Limited. So obviously we could go on for a bit longer, but that should be enough. You get the idea, and we have something to pick for each of our companies. That's it. Now we have 3 pick lists we can use in our object definition. That's where the fun begins. So we add a new object. We call it gift recording, external code gift recording. You see, whenever I have a custom value for external codes or similar codes, the system will add the prefix cust underscore to it, so you always know what's SuccessFactors standard and what is your custom fields. Little description. And off we go. So there are a couple of fields, external code, external name, are already in there. The external code is usually a primary key, and I want this to be the user to record the gift, so the user who's either receiving the gift or giving it, and therefore we need to change the data type to user. External code, leave it as it is, but we make it a required field as well, and we'll see later in the user interface what we use it for. So now we will need a few more fields. An obvious one would be the date, so when has the gift been handed over, the invitation happened. Just call this really date, and then the field type is also date, and we also want this to be a mandatory field. Other than that, we would want to know what type of gift it was, or was it an actual gift, or maybe was it an invitation. So let's call it gift type. So gift type. And here we actually want to refer to our pick list. We want to make it required field 2, and to make sure that it uses the pick list, we have to go into the advanced option, value source, pick list gift. It's quite important to understand whether the employee has received the gift or given the gift. So now we say here receiver, which would be yes or no field. So that's Boolean type, and again this should be mandatory. Or is our employee the giver of the gift? Also that would be yes or no field, also mandatory. So now we have a lot of data up there, but we still don't know who was actually involved in the transaction. We know our employee, but we don't know who the business partner involved was. So that would be the company first. And here we have to refer again to our pick lists. It's mandatory too. And we have to link to our particular pick list. That's the business partner compliance here. Again, we ignore the other fields. Couple of more to go. So the individual or the person who received or gave the gift is another field. Again, referring to a pick list. Where is it? Here. Again, mandatory, because we really always want to know who the individual was. And that would be business partner employee for compliance. Let's add one more field so the employee can actually record a comment or an explanation. We could leave string here, but that's quite restricted, so I'd rather go for this, which means it's a really long text. And just for a change, we don't make this mandatory. So this means we have our fields. And the nice thing about the Extension Center really is that we have all our all the work we need to do listed here. At that point, we don't go into relationships. That would be something if you have various data objects and want to define relationships between them. But we do want to add a workflow. Let's make this a pretty simple one. We call it gift recording. Say if somebody gets this workflow and ignores it, he will be reminded within 5 days. We don't want this to be delegated, no alternative workflow, no redirects, just very simple. For approver we use a role, and that should be the manager. If we want it to be the manager of the current employee using it, the manager should not be able to edit anything. If there's no approver found, that means if the employee doesn't have the manager, we stop the workflow. We want this to be the manager of the employee involved, even if somebody else would initiate the workflow. And we say don't respect permissions, so the manager could see the workflow data even if he doesn't have the permissions for it. Just as one example. So let's make this a one-step approval workflow, but we want actually somebody else to be able to contribute with comments. We make this a dynamic group, and selecting the group, I mean typically it would possibly be the compliance team, but for simplicity's sake we use an existing group. Let's say the benefits group should also know about this, and again we say whoever picks up this workflow isn't checked against their permissions. As you see, we could add further steps, we could add CC roles, but let's this be a very simple workflow. Approver role, okay, I thought I selected that, but probably not properly. So it should be now. Save. Yes, workflow is saved. So then let's look at the properties of our object. Effective dating. Actually, I believe we don't need effective dating for that. Though coming from SAP on-premise, I'm very much an effective dating freak. But for this particular, because the gift given happens on a particular date, it's not going over a period. It's always a single date, so there's no effective dating really required. Looking at advanced properties, yes, I would want to see a history if changes are made to the data. Default screen, we get to that in a minute. The subject user field should be the external code. I hope I typed this correctly. So that means the first field we had earlier, which is type user, would actually be the recording user. And finally, the workflow creates a to-do, and we want this to sit in a particular category. Let's use the generic data change category. So whoever is picking this up, I will find it in their normal to-do list. So let's save that for the time being. So we saved that, and now we see that with the fields and the properties saved, we have rules and UI and security available. So let's look at the fields again. We haven't added any keys yet. You can decide what your keys should be. I think we would pick the external name and maybe the custom date field, so the same name on the same date can only be used once, and maybe we use the name and the external code for search fields. Obviously can add more search fields, but that should be fine for now. Let's save this status again, see whether the system is happy with us. It is. And then let's go to rules. There's a variety of rules we could add. We could add rules to default fields at initialization when the object is opened first, for validation, and so on. I only actually want to add one rule for the time being, which is to make sure that the fields receiver or giver match. So actually I think we only should allow the employee to fill in whether or not he or she is the receiver of the gift, and then fill in the giver field automatically. So our rule would actually refer to this field. We add a new rule. The rule name is fill giver. Same here, start date is fine. Rule type, data change rule. Don't give a description. So this rule is triggered whenever the receiver field is changed, and the condition we would set is if the receiver field is yes, then we set the giver field to no. Otherwise, we set the giver field to yes. That makes sure that it's always matching. If the employee recording has received the gift, then obviously he or she can't have given it in the other way around. Other ways to do this, but I think that is a nice way to show you how to use rules in a very simple context. So we've got a rule, we've got a workflow, we haven't got a UI yet. UI is actually quite simple. Yes, of course we want to save. We have to give it a name, which surprisingly is gift recording. And then all the other fields, they are already here. So we could change the layout, we could make a few other changes. The only thing I want to do here is actually give the external code and external name fields easier to understand labels. So that's where the label override field comes in. So the code is actually the recording employee. We gave it the data type user, and for the external name we want to make it this kind of the headline of the gift occasion, or just call it occasion. That's that. So that you could make it look differently in the properties. You could switch the layout to a flow or a grid. Grid would just put things into one row. But for the time being, we leave it in this simple format, just to keep the exercise short and sweet, and save it as it is. So now we do actually have a user interface, and therefore we could go back into properties where there was one field we didn't fill in earlier, and that's the default screen. Because we didn't have a default screen earlier, or any screen, now we do. Final step, security. Again, we keep it simple. We just switch security off. Obviously you wouldn't do this in the real world. You would want to be able to assign permission in your permission roles to make sure that only certain people can use it. But we leave it at that, we save it as it is, and now we should actually be able to use it. Well, we do have a data object, we do have a screen, but now we still want to make sure that the employee can actually change it, find it in their profile. So that means we have to make an amendment to the people profile itself. You will be familiar with this step if you have added other views into the people profile. which we are now accessing from the admin center. We could move our view into any other section, but just for the fun of it, we add a new section. We call it compliance. Then we have the untitled subsection, which we can also rename. And then we want to actually have our new screen in one of those blocks. So how do we get it here? That's just one thing you need to know where to look. We could search, but basically what we are looking for is at the very bottom, the live profile MDF. This just allows you to add any custom MDF screens to the people profile. So you can just search for ours. It's not difficult to find, so it's the gift recording one. And now what we've built in the last 15 or 20 minutes should also be available in the people profile. Last step, we said we don't want the data object to use role-based permissions, but we added a new section to the people profile, and all people profile sections are controlled by permissions. So we need to find the permission role of the user I want to demo with. That's quite easy. I know it's a sysadmin. So for this exercise, we just add the new permission into the sysadmin role. If you're familiar with role-based permissions, this will be nothing new for you. So we need to look at employee views. And there's just one section which is not ticked, which is our new compliance section. So tick that. That's that. Save our changes, so our sysadmin role should now be able to access our newly created section with our new data object. So that means we now need to go in our employee file. So our sysadmin is now kind of going into self-service mode, open their own employee file. Because we put it right there down at the bottom, we have to scroll all the way down. See the new section compliance, see the new gift box, hit the change icon, and then our newly defined screen comes up. So the occasion where the invitation or gift happened, we are talking about medical healthcare professions, so let this be the oncologists convention. Which has happened on the 1st of November. As a gift type, we make this an invitation, and we say we actually did receive this invitation, or basically I who was recording this was the invited person. You see that our data change rule immediately also filled in the giver field with now. Obviously, if we have received it, then we couldn't have given it. So the business partner company, we make this Guy's Hospital in London, and we know that our inviter was Yuan Lee. We find her. Little comment. In this case, in our comment, we would also make a note about the estimated value. I guess that would definitely be a field that you wouldn't have in the comment. You would have an extra data field for that. You would possibly have a few more data fields. But yeah, want to keep it reasonably short. Um, if you look at the timing, we've spent about 20 minutes building this, a few minutes explaining and testing. Give it another 10 minutes and it's probably perfect in terms of any extra field you might possibly want. Save it, and now our workflow triggers. So isn't that great? We can enter a comment here for our approver. But if we don't actually know who our approver is, we can also check out the workflow participants. So that's on every workflow in SuccessFactors. When you get to this stage here, under your comment field, you would have this link, show workflow participants. We see that the approver is Charles Brown, this is my manager, and then we have the benefits admin group, or you could make it your compliance group, any group you want, as a contributor who would be informed and can also comment on the transaction. That's it. So it's 30 minutes with introduction, build, explanation, and test. I think that's quite impressive. One word of warning I really want to give: it's technically very, very easy. However, there's still some knowledge required to actually make a proper design. So I wouldn't allow every key user, even if they could use the tool, to do this, because you need to understand data modeling to some extent, to know how to build relationships, which data types to use, how to work with pick lists, and maybe most significantly, when to actually use the extension center in a metadata object. Because there are often easier ways to do it, just using custom fields that are available. That would also mean you wouldn't eat into your entitlement of metadata objects you are allowed to create within your license without extra charge. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening and watching. If you want to find more information about SuccessFactors, have a look at our blog at iprocon.com, where you'll find subsections for SuccessFactors as well as others like SAP HCM, HR System Strategy, or Concur. If you want to learn more about it, if you maybe want a extension center workshop, if you want somebody to help you build extensions, or just talk about your SuccessFactors or Employee Central implementation strategy, have some questions about optimization, continuous innovation, just get in touch, drop us an email. We would love to be in touch with you to help you out and maybe run a project with you. Goodbye.